The Horseman, welcome to Florespark. This is the second book made by Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett. The first one being Alpha Core #1, which made over $1.3 million and was a smash hit with the fans. So, of course, there was a lot of goodwill that Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett got from the Rippaverse fandom. And when Horseman was announced, and then being this cool vigilante character that came from the minds of Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett, it really generated a lot of excitement by the fandom, and I am here to say that that hype is not unwarranted. This is a fantastic book, and we're going to get into why I think that, and of course, going to head into spoiler territory. So this is your last warning. If you do not want to be spoiled, click off now and watch after you've gotten your book, you've read it, and you've enjoyed it as much as I did. So we're going to get right into this. Chuck Dixon, of course, is the writer of this book. Joe Bennett is the artist, Jay Brown is the colorist, Fabio Jansen is the inker, and Fabio Jansen also did the commentary on Art of Alpha Core, which is select pencils from Alpha Core #1. He did the commentary for that book. Covered it on Braxcast, and all of these guys, they do an absolutely amazing job, and not only just establishing a really interesting story that draws you in, but making it visually interesting as well, and keeping the reader engaged throughout the 90-something page. I don't know, runtime is I guess that's the best word, or read time, whatever term you want to use. The page count throughout the pages of this book is a very interesting, very engaging book. It is paced pretty quickly. There's a lot of information that gets presented, and since this book is, it's called Horseman, it focuses mostly on horsemen. Some of the other characters don't get as much characterization as Hector does, but this book definitely starts out correctly, and it starts out like Alpha Core did, with this first, one-page spread full of action that really draws the reader in. Of course, Alpha Core #1 had that bank robbery scene. It started with the hostage situation, which was really interesting, and of course, having a nice 2-page spread that just shows horsemen laying it down is a really, really interesting thing to see. And of course, it just draws you in and keeps you invested in the story. And then it goes with this fight, and then it ends with him having to move his family from Drescher, this is where they live, to Florespark, and that's where the main plot line goes, where you have, Hector being this former military guy, so he's this trained Army Ranger fighter, and he's basically busting down a bunch of gangs, and he's using the money that these guys are getting from selling drugs to support his family, while he's lying to his family that he is in fact selling drugs. He does get found out pretty quickly though, so that's not the most dramatic thing. It's really more, instead of it being him trying to hide his secret identity, it's him trying to reconcile the fact that he's this vigilante that's brutally killing criminals with being basically being the father figure in this situation where his sister was paralyzed while she was 6 months pregnant with his nephew, and of course his brother-in-law was killed, so he has to assume the role of being a family man, and then he gets revenge on the people who killed his brother-in-law and almost killed his sister and left her paralyzed. And then it really establishes that's what drove him to being the Horseman. And then he gets into enough trouble where he moves down to Florespark, and that's where the main storyline of this book begins, the Welcome to Florespark part. And that's really what makes it interesting, is that it's not a true origin story, but you know how he became who he was and his character motivations. That's really revealed well, or that's really revealed throughout the book. And that's what's focused on, is developing the character of Horseman, and all the other characters really just serve as a way to develop and build upon Horseman's story, which of course which is what you want for the main character of a book. And he does get found out by some detectives based on his VIN, so it's shown that he's just sloppy at being a vigilante. So he's really skilled at laying it down. He's this guy that has military experience, so he knows how to be a brutal killer. He knows how to break into places, but he's not really good at doing clandestine operations. He's not really the best at navigating the criminal scene of Florespark in a way where he gets out completely unscathed. He's just really, really good at murdering people and open combat, which is really what you want from a vigilante story. And it definitely, I think, is what they're going for, is that sort of character. But with the really interesting thing is that you've got, the main antagonist of the story. Again, like, look how fantastic these two-page spreads are. Like, and these are what really drives the action, is that you'll have exposition, and that'll be, your 6, 4 to 7, or however many panels, right? That establish the transition between these action scenes, and then you've got these epic action scenes that are just drawn fantastically. The colors are on point, and of course you've got the lettering, especially with Horseman's inner monologue, that really just draws the reader in and keeps the reader engaged until the end of the book. And another thing that I really love with the Rippaverse is that this is, of course, a comic book universe. So when he's in Florespark, he encounters the Alpha Corps. So you've got Tuna, who is running these, drug dealing gangs, and then you've got Hector, who comes in and basically lays waste to all of these guys, takes their money, and uses it to start supporting his family, right? And then he gets found out by these two detectives, basically on his first run. This is the scene where it happens, and that leads to drama where these guys are playing Hector, and they're also playing Tuna, and of course they're also trying to make it seem like they're upstanding officers of the law, which they definitely were not in this story. And then you've got the fact that these detectives intentionally fail at trying to eliminate a Horseman. So you've got Blitz and Sturm, who are these characters. So you see this guy, that's Blitz, and I believe that's Sturm. So you've got those two basically like neo-Nazi type of characters that get introduced into the fray, and they are accepts. So it leads to a pretty interesting final fight, and that final fight can only be resolved by Braxwell. So of course, if I can find it. Yep, you see right here, you've got Braxwell basically coming in and saving Horsemen from getting slaughtered by these two accepts. And then you've got, basically them taken out of the picture. What takes Tuna out of the picture, and if you don't know much, I can see, so you can see it here in this little panel. I'm not sure best, but basically this little panel here is where it's shown that Michael Copper and Lillian Renashi take out Tuna. So Tuna is a one and done character in this book. He doesn't really have much of a big story, so he's one of the smaller gangs, and as he was working his way up, he gets taken down by Michael Copper and Lillian Renashi. So I imagine the fallout of this gang being taken out by them is going to be involved later in the Rippaverse, but it's not going to be him butting heads with Darren Fontano, and Darren Fontano does not appear in this book. But the fact that you've got Alpha Corps playing a big role in this book, the fact that you've got Michael Copper and Lillian Renashi playing a big role in this book as well, even though it's a really short role. It's like one panel where they appear, but they take out Tuna. So that really helps tie up the story. So all the plot lines established in the story, they get tied up, but they get tied up pretty quickly. But it does, mean that while the story is satisfying, it feels really nice, it can also feel a little bit rushed to some readers because you have, the main antagonist getting taken out in one page, right? Instead of it being part of this bigger narrative. But like I said, that was done to focus more on Horseman. It's more about characterizing Horseman, focusing on him, focusing on this dynamic between him being this vigilante and reconciling that with him being this, bog standard family man that's supposed to be working a regular 9-to-5 job or, overnight at a factory, basically being this upstanding moral citizen that's supporting his family as an uncle instead of the father who was brutally murdered, along with, the mother being paralyzed by these criminals. And of course, that being the impetus, him going after the people that did that to his sister and his brother-in-law, is a really good impetus. And it leaves this, great foundation for the morality of Horseman, that he has a strong moral code. He wants to protect his family, but he also doesn't want to lie or deceive his family as well, which, you know, why he's so bad at hiding the fact that he is Horseman, because he's, I would say, I'm not sure I would say intentionally sloppy, but the sloppiness happens is that he's not this character that was meant to be a deceiver. He was just this really good soldier. He had this moral impetus to become a vigilante, and then he was trying to navigate being a vigilante with being a family man. And I think it's a really good foundation for a story. And of course, the end result, the fallout of getting saved by the Alpha Corps, is that he doesn't end up getting arrested, even though he should have been by the Alpha Corps. If you're, you know, of course, it's what you do to vigilantes, since they are state sanctioned, the Alpha Corps. But they let him go in exchange for him retiring. But of course, that ends with a, oh, if I can see here, that's like, you know, last ride of the Horsemen. Solari told me I'm going to have to live with that for now. Of course, that for now really opens up the door for the Horsemen getting back involved in vigilantism. So there is definitely an opportunity to build this story out and make Horseman an ongoing character. I think that's the intention, considering the fact that they want to do a full season, you know, with that being contingent on them getting enough members to sign up for the Riververse membership. Basically, having if they had the financial ability to make a full season of the Horsemen, they would do that. And like I said, when that was first announced, when, you know, the Horsemen's collection was ongoing a couple months ago, that would require there to be comic book content to really capitalize and adapt that. And I think Chuck Dixon has an idea of where to take this character from where he left it. But the thing that I love about this is that what he's using to develop the character of Horseman is the Alpha Corps, is Michael Copper and Lillian Renasci, or Lillian Renasci as well, to tie up the loose ends of Tuna, right? That gang that Horseman is going after is basically eliminated in one page by Michael Copper, Lillian Renasci. And if you read Alpha Corps #1, you would have a pretty good idea of who they are. And if you read ISOM #1, you'd have kind of an idea of who they are as well. And you'd have an even better idea of who those two characters are if you read the Dokkan cards as well. This is all part of just really hammering home the fact that this is a comic book universe. You have these multiple storylines that are running alongside of each other, but also intersect and build upon each other, right? ISOM doesn't appear in this book, but characters from ISOM appear in this book, right? And that's the fantastic thing about the Rippaverse. That's what Chuck Dixon really understands, since, you know, he has a pretty good history of writing at DC, a lot of Batman. Some of the best, you know, Batman comics are because of him. So he understands what makes a comic book universe great, interesting, and engaging, and he's bringing that expertise to the Rippaverse. And of course, Joe Bennett really knocked it out of the park with his pencil work, bringing all of that action and fun to life. And then you've got Fabio Jansen and Jay Brown really just refining his art and really elevating it to a fantastic level, which, like I said, really keeps the reader engaged and really just makes you want more from this team. And that's really all you can ask for with a comic book, is that you finish reading it, you're like, I want to read the next issue. And that's what Chuck Dixon did with Alpha Corps #1. That's what he did with this book. And that's what I hope he keeps doing with the Rippaverse. That's what I hope the Rippaverse keeps on doing with all of their future releases. But that is my Horseman review. It's a pretty short one. Of course, I tend to ramble. I don't script things out the best. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. And if you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that fantastic stuff. Joker is out.